retired school marm from the University of Washington, where I taught for what seems like a very long eternity. And I'm happy to say that there's life after retirement. I wanted to thank Northwest Designer Craftsmen today, the sponsor, along with the Whatcom Museum, for this event. Northwest Designer Craftsmen, as many of you know, is a group that was founded over 60 years ago. In fact, we had our 60th anniversary exhibition at the Lightcatcher Gallery now a few years ago. I'm sure some of you were able to see that. I'm a relative newcomer to the group. I only joined in 1984, but there are people here who have been members since the 60s, and in fact in the late 50s when it was first founded by a group of craftspeople who wanted to find a way of bringing a level of professionalism to their particular art forms. Furniture maker, ceramics, jewelry, and a variety of other collective artisans, craftsmen, and professionals in the field. So today I'm not the speaker, I'm just the facilitator. The real speakers are all sitting in front of you. And before we begin, if we could just go around and have each one of you briefly state your name for the group. Some of you are well known, some of you may not be known to some of the people here. So why don't we start at the end with Dorothy? Oh, well, wait, you have the microphone.
I'll
Start with it.
Okay, I'm Nancy Loorem Adams, Jen Hopkins, Danielle Bodine, Polly Adams Sutton, Charissa Brock,
Bill Roeder,
Lanny Bergner,
Judy Zugish,
Katherine Lewis, Nordfors Clark,
Leland Russell,
Dorothy McGuinness. Thank you. The way the panel will proceed today is that each of the artists have been invited to prepare answers to a selection of questions. They aren't really aware at this point which question will be presented to them, but they have been allowed to prepare for the various questions. There will be three different sections. The first section is going to be talking about process, and as you have been able to see from the exhibitions, basketry is a process-heavy art form. The time and energy that goes into all of the work that's on display here represents probably hundreds of thousands of hours, not just for these pieces, but for the time and energy and preparation to actually know how to even begin to make these pieces, and much less to become masters, many of whom are here in this room with us. So, the artisans and craftspeople and artists who are in the audience, prepare your own questions, because at the end we will have an opportunity for you to ask directly to the artist. We've been asked to try and limit your responses to 1 minute. Now, I know in a lifetime of practice, a 1 minute answer may seem quite difficult, but I do have a timer here. Don't worry, I won't use the timer, but I will try and keep track of time. So, the first question is for Charissa. Okay, and the first question is, what would you say the best lesson that you have learned about your craft would be?
So, what I do takes hours and hours to do, and what I feel like the best lesson I've learned is patience, and it takes persistence and continued practice at sitting and working to create the patience, and out of practicing patience comes more patience. And what makes it the best lesson is that not only does it work in my studio, it's a good lesson in my studio, but also I carry it into my life where I'm more patient with my child and my community and my own students and the world at large.
Good. Bill, would you like to take a little stab at that question?
Well, I think you took the words out of my mouth with the scale well of patience. every piece of willow, it was a living thing. It's all different. It responds differently to the process. The perseverance means that when you've got bad willow or you're having a bad time, you just have to persevere, and eventually you come out the other side. You learn from every piece that you pull through the tools.
The question is, what are the most unexpected materials that you have used in your craft? And this is a question for Jill.
As many of you already know, I work with hoggut, which is better known as sausage casing or otherwise pig intestines. A little bit unusual. Luckily, I don't have to clean it. I get it from a wholesale sausage casing company in Seattle, and it's already cleaned for me. The native people in Alaska who have to clean their seal and walrus that have a much worse product than I do. But it really is a wonderful medium. And I do have a dedicated freezer where I can keep the hoggut. I get it in 5-gallon buckets and keep it in a dedicated freezer. So there you go, anybody want to try it.
I would like to present that same question to Lanny Bergner. Most unexpected materials.
Most unexpected materials. I've worked with a lot of different materials over the years. I work with mesh a lot now, but I first started out using just common insect screen. But probably, and also silicone and pins and a lot of different stuff. But probably the most unusual one was, this is in Philadelphia, back in the 80s and 90s. That's when I was kind of doing more mixed media work. But I was looking for a material that I could do kind of a sheer, kind of stretchy kind of fabric. So I went into the local department store and bought 12 bags of black nylon hose. So that's probably the most unusual one.
All right then. Related to materials carrying the same theme. The next question, which is going to be for Polly, is there a new material or approach that you wish to explore in your work?
There's no new material, but I've been thinking about using ways that I could make the cedar a different color, because I'm not very good at exploring color. Cedar has its own basic color, and I use wire, which has a little color. So I've been trying to think of ways that I could change the color of the cedar. I've tried mud, which is kind of traditional, and I'm looking at other ways to do that. Thinking of rust, maybe. So that's my answer, rust.
What kind of wire do you use?
I use magnet wire.
So it's coated.
It's coated, but actually that's another new material that I just started working with, is stainless wire. So stainless, and that's been fun.
Okay. A new material or approach that you might be interested in introducing in your work, Jan?
I think right now, because I'm out in nature a lot with my husband, and we go gooey duck hunting, and get the permits and everything, so it's perfectly legal. But the thing that I really enjoy is processing. And when we were processing the gooey duck, you have to peel the skin off of the neck, and it stretches out, and it's really interesting. So it's almost like hoggut in a sense. It's very beautiful. But I guess if you knew what it was, you would be appalled. But it's like sturgeon skin or anything else that I use. I just see the beauty and the color and the texture of these materials, and I don't think about what it's from. But that's the one thing that I have in my storage right now that I am really looking forward to exploring.
Thank you. This is a question for Dorothy. What aspect of your to be the most difficult?
I think for me, it's mostly deciding what to work on next and actually starting to do it. I have a lot of ideas, but sometimes it's hard to go, pick that one, or work on this one, or I'm in the middle of this piece, but I'm really interested in doing this technique over here. So for me, it's the getting started, really. I think for me, is the hardest part.
Do you see the pieces finished before you begin?
Sometimes I think I do, and I'm wrong. Decides itself, it's going to be something else.
Leon, what would you say to that question? Aspect being the most difficult of your work.
I think the most difficult aspect for me is actually letting go of the piece, recognizing it as complete. I always want to finesse it a little bit more, make it a little bit more perfect. I think I must work with a subconscious thought of, I don't want to see the piece down the road in 15 or 20 years and think, I wish I had done so-and-so, or worse, I wish I hadn't done it.
Nancy, what would you say about that?
Well, I'm kind of like Dorothy. I have lots and lots of ideas. It's not the difficulty coming up with ideas. It's making them. Like Dorothy's work, once I've made a commitment to making a piece, it's a big commitment. There's a lot of work and a lot of material and a lot of time invested. And I'm always wanting to say something with the work I do. I do a lot of conceptual pieces, and I work in random weave, and I love the intersection of my thoughts about random weave and how it intersects with the concepts I'm trying to express. So the hardest thing is making a decision and commitment to get started on a piece, but mostly because I have so many ideas, and which one is it going to funnel into?
Well, we talked about a lot of time process, hard work. Danielle, what do you find to be the most enjoyable part of your work? What aspect?
I've got several, not just one, but I'll be 1 minute.
No, I mean, wax.
No, but
I'm briefly eloquent.
no, what I want to do is find objects that I'd like to cast paper on, and either baskets or plastic objects. I love going into dollar stores and finding plastic things that I can cast the paper on, and I don't know what it's. I don't have a plan at the beginning, and so I'm not like some of you. Some of you who have a big plan. No, and then I start playing with them, and I'm putting them together, and I find such joy in that. But I also find the meditative really satisfying, because when I'm putting casting paper on objects, there's something very calming about it. It's also, and also quiet, which is another thing I use a lot in my work, and that to me is a very peaceful, calming thing. So that's it.
Yeah, this is also the question for Katherine. What do you find to be the most enjoyable aspect of your work?
Now, of course, that everybody else is talking about, I think there are a million other things, but one of the parts of the process that I do really enjoy a lot is getting prepared for the making. I draw out what I'm going to make. I do have a plan. There is not a surprise. It's not supposed to be a surprise in what I do. So I draw out what I'm going to make, and then I spend a lot of time sorting the material, and I really enjoy that process of sorting the materials. I work with willows that I grow on my farm, so I'm using natural colors, so I'm picking out what varieties and what colors, getting the sizes right, getting that all prepared. And then they go in the soaking tank for 2 weeks, so I really do have to be organized and have notes and have drawings, or 2 weeks later I might have forgotten what I thought was going to happen with those materials. Sometimes I do just plain throw things in the soaking tank and then take them out and sort and decide what I'm making when I actually have the willow right in front of me. But then I can't add another color that I didn't already soak. So there does still have to be a plan, a long-term plan involved. And I like that. I like that part a lot.
Pass the microphone over.
Same question?
Same question.
So you've got a couple of willow people here, and we work as differently as you can. Each range of interest in the material really comes into play. So my work begins in the garden too. Begins with 5 years of growing the material and then harvesting it. And that process of being in the garden with it, letting that simmer for 5 years, whatever my idea might be, it doesn't go into a drawing. It goes into some sort of a seeding process, I think. And so I wind up patiently waiting until I can harvest a material, and then patiently waiting until that material is cured, and then beginning to process. And every step of that way, some story comes out in the work itself, and it comes maybe from the time that I was harvesting, or what my life was like at that time, or ambitions, growing children, who knows. But that's what I find is the thing I circle around to, back again and again and again, is being in touch with every step of the material from the ground up.
Thank you. The last question related to process, and this is, something that everyone who is a maker thinks about as they're making, but the favorite part of the process, is it the end product, the state that you're in while you're making it, the idea of coming up with it? What is your favorite part of this whole process from the beginning to the end? Not the favorite aspect that you enjoy the most, but in the midst of making. Lanny, do you want to talk about that?
Well, I guess it's just sort of the process itself. And there's a certain, which a lot of us do, is all these repetitive kind of processes. And that, I think I have a need to do that, just to kind of quiet myself. And which I think I inherited from my mother, who was an avid crocheter and stuff, and rug maker. Yeah, all the time when I was growing up, that's all she did in the evening, was that. And I inherited that capacity to do that. And it's kind of fun because I started out as a sculptor, like a stone carver and wood carver and bronze casting and all that, and just gravitated over to something that I needed to work more directly with my hands and something repetitive. So it's that kind of meditative quality of that appeals to me, and I just kind of have to do it, otherwise I think I just kind of go crazy.
Jill, what would you say about that?
Well, working with gut is an interesting process too. First of all, I don't have to wash it from the animal, but I do wash the salt out of it because it comes packed in a salt brine, and that's my least favorite part of the process. I make a mold out of foam core, and then I stitch. I thread the gut on a needle and stitch over the mold. And the most exciting part of the whole thing is when the gut is dried on the mold, and I can take the mold out, and then all you get is this wonderful, lacy, airy thing, and it stands on its own. It's so amazing. It starts out just limp and like cooked fettuccine, and then it ends up being like a tennis racket or some kind of those old snowshoes. So anyway, that's the most exciting part for me, is the unveiling. I think it's a lot like ceramics. People taking pieces out of the kiln. You never know what you're going to get.
Bill, that's the same question for you.
Well, undoubtedly, the most enjoyable part for me is the beginning of the basket. That includes having to prepare all the willow and then the sizing. And when I say the beginning is the most exciting part, it's when you have literally, you determine the technique and you begin to size the willow for that technique. And that includes going to a micrometer, 1,000
Any last comments anyone would like to make with regard to their process from the beginning through the final photography before it goes out of your studio?
Oh, I'll say one thing. I get really excited gathering cedar, but then I get excited again when the basket starts to form because I don't have any ideas of what I'm going to do. So the way it happens, and then I'm excited.
Good. I can say something. See, go ahead.
I think I grew up on a farm, and I just love getting out in nature and seeing the possibilities. I'm not formally educated in arts at all, but basketry was just something that I love to do, and I love being out in nature. And I think finding the materials, figuring out how I can use them, and even going to the store and picking up grapefruit. I think knowing the texture and really looking at things with wonder and what can I do with this, that's something that I really enjoy doing. And I think that part of the process of discovery is the most important thing to me.
Thank you.
So heritage definitely plays a part in my work. And my mom is an artist. And when we go, so growing up that way, I already was steeped in the arts. And then going to visit both sets of grandparents growing up, I had a woodworking great-grandfather and a grandmother that made china dolls and quilts, and my other grandmother made quilts. And there's just, I got to see all the quilts every time I went home. And so I already knew there was this long line of makers in my family. And then, of course, I'm definitely inspired by artifacts from all different cultures, just the patterns and the colors and the complexity and the meanings that they have to the various cultures. And then I was recently in Japan, and I got to go visit Taname Chukinsai's studio, and he showed me this basket that was a tobacco pouch and made out of bamboo by his great-great-grandfather. And I noticed there were colors in the tobacco pouch. I said, wow, this bamboo has colors. He says, oh, that's because those parts are made from old samurai arrows. And up until that point, I knew that bamboo had, there's a cultural connection and it's been used for, hundreds of years in Japan, but it hadn't really hit home to that, at that very visceral level until then, how steeped the material I use is in heritage. So it's more meaningful to work with now.
Thank you. In terms of content in one's work, the next question for Nancy starting, what are you trying to say with your work?
I mentioned earlier that I work with random weeds, and I've really grown to have this. You got metal. I've got it. So I really see an enormous beauty in randomness, and I feel like so much of what goes on in our culture, our society, and our environment has this kind of random nature when it comes together with thoughts and ideas that get formed around a concept that makes something. So something coming out of great randomness into order. And I spend way too much time watching the news, and there's so many things coming into my mind that really get me going emotionally. Addiction, the gun issues, just all the environmental issues that are swirling around us all the time. And so I've been working on trying to bring together this, the beauty of random order and building out a conceptual idea with that expresses some of the paradox that we're experiencing in our culture that makes things so complicated, working with around these conceptual ideas.
And, excuse me. And in other side of what would, if you were to flip a coin, I'm going to pose this question to Dorothy, whose work is the antithesis of random. We're talking about a certain kind of mathematical relationship between all the parts and the individual.
I don't do any conceptual work in general. My work is technical. I'm not thinking about what it means, or I'm thinking about how it's going to go together. So I'm totally like that, totally the opposite of conceptualization. Sometimes the work can be interpreted conceptually after the fact, but that's not what I'm going for when I'm making it. I'm a technical. How will this work if I do this to it? That's how I'm working.
So do you carry on a dialogue with the form as it develops? I mean, you've got a certain mathematical proportion that you have to deal with.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of math involved, but I don't. Once it started, There's not much I can do about it after the fact. It does what it does, and once the pieces are together, we start reading this. It's not that there isn't anything else I could do, but I usually don't do anything but just read it.
Okay. Bill, next question is for you. And the question is, who in your area of art and or craft do you most admire?
Well, in mine directly, I'm the only person in the U.S. doing it. So I would say Germany, of course, is the people I've worked with there and stuff, the masters, that's my community. I'll be going back this year, and I'll be working with another master that I've not been able to work with, a fellow I know. And a couple of my friends will also, from over there, will be working. And that's truly my community at this point.
Okay. Judy, do you think of yourself as belonging to a craft community?
Oh, definitely. It's really interesting. You get started in a life in your backyard, and one day you find yourself connecting to other people who have similar tastes, similar tendencies to get into nature, wanting to do things with their hands and fiddle with them, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, these are my people. And at that point, it starts to grow. And I've been at this about 40 years now, and it's included people in Denmark that I call my sisters, people in Germany, people in Japan. It has become such a community, and it's gotten to where every time I get together and start to teach, which I was just doing a little art hat down in Palm Springs, and I say to the group, okay, in the afterlife, you know we're in the corner that's making baskets, and I'm glad to be there. So it's been quite an incredible journey in that way.
Jan, what about your community? Do you think of yourself as belonging to a craft community?
I do. I think when I started with Native American artists. I learned my skill technically, and actually learned a lot from contemporary artists too. I think I've been very lucky to experience different cultural communities, especially recently going to a gathering with Pacific Rim artists from all over the world. So I feel like I started out in basketry, and because of what I do and because of the exposure, I've been able to meet people from other countries and just really learn a lot culturally. So I think right now that's where I'm at as far as my community.
it's one of those things, hopefully, all artists participate in, which is a lifetime of learning and ongoing process. But I have a couple of specific questions, and the first one will be for Danielle. As a teacher, what is the most important thing that you have learned from your students?
To me, the most important thing is just to watch the joy they have in creating, and when they're working through whatever basket we're working on, when they have questions about it, and other students come in and have solutions to certain areas that I might not have, or they might bring a new technique into the process, and I love that. And especially if I get students that are in other fields, like engineering, and something entirely different. I love that energy that they bring to it, and it's a whole different way of, I learn a lot through that, and for children. I love the children and the excitement that they have, and I had one little girl just recently who was in a class, and her dad was there, but she had a mind of her own, and he was kind of suggesting things, and she just took off and did this most incredible sculpture in like 15 minutes. So that's what I find joy in.
All right. I have a whole list of you here who teach your craft. Katherine, would you like to comment on what you have learned from your students that is the most important thing that you can think of?
So this is a little different of a response than what Danielle just had to say. Because the basketry that I do comes from a traditional European basketry form, it has rules. And a lot of what I make is functional, and even if I'm not making things that are functional, they still use the functional rules. And so when I'm teaching a functional object that has those rules and has patterns and has ways that it needs to happen to hold together, to be the expected end result. And there is an end result. Not that everybody in class makes the same thing, but there is a basic form that we are all making. And so one of the things that I have learned through teaching is that I have to be extremely good at what I do, because I have to be able to problem solve when I see something that I've never had happen that way myself, perhaps, but I have to see what's happening in the student's basket and figure out what happened there and does it need to be corrected and how can we correct it. And I also discovered that people's brains work so differently, and that's one of the really fascinating things about teaching is that you can have somebody ask you a question and you can't even understand what they're asking you. And then, as you're trying to figure out how to answer their question, you realize that what you're saying to them must be just as incomprehensible to them as what you're hearing. So there's a lot of learning how to look at things, how to see things many different ways. So I've learned a lot about being a basket maker from being able to pass that on to other people.
Great. Polly, you teach as well. What is the most important thing you've learned from your students?
I think actually it follows along with what Katherine was saying, because I learned how to become patient myself with what is going on with them. And I don't think I was patient before, but through them I learned to be patient, to try to understand what it is they need to know or learn. So that's the biggest thing.
We're gonna wind this up here. Last question. At some point, none of you knew how to do what you do now, and it's been a process of decades, in many cases, of practicing and refining and developing your particular abilities in the way that you do them. So what I'd like you to do is to scroll back through the data banks and see if you can basically describe your most exceptional educational experience. And we're going to start with Jan.
I'm sorry, can you
In one sentence, what is the best educational experience you have had? period, question mark.
Oh, okay.
Yes, related to your practice.
You start with somebody else.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy to start with Leon.
I think probably the best educational experience I've had as a basket maker is having pieces rejected. There is nothing quite like having a good dose of reality to smack you in the face, to put this ethereal realm that we weave in, that we show in, that we hopefully sell in the proper perspective. And I haven't luckily had it happen that often, but it's good to have a little dose of humility every once in a while.
Dorothy, what about you?
I think the best one, I would just say, is in general, happy to be around when the basketry school started and being able to participate in all the different classes and work with different teachers and materials and, make the basis of what I do now. And without that, I wouldn't be a basket maker. I doing something else, so.
Okay, Chance, if she's ready. Wait, Layne, what did we talk before we went over?
I guess this isn't really directly related to basket making, but back when I was in high school, I took a sculpture class. And we had a student teacher, and she gave an assignment to do a paper mache album. And I thought that was just the stupidest assignment in the world. So I wadded up paper, made this abstract piece, threw red paint on it, turned it in, and she gave me an A. And that was a very important lesson for me, because I expressed myself. And she gave me an A for it. And ever since then, what I make is what I want to see. So I've kind of always been expressing myself. As far as maybe more positive education thing, I had an opportunity about 4 years after high school to work with sculptor Phil McCracken. And just his process and being there and seeing his craft, what he did, and I kind of filtered through me. So that was probably the most important education that I ever had, even though I have a master's degree in art.
I think once I thought about it, I thought the most important educational thing that I learned was right now, after 5 years, my husband and I have been working on a Japanese-American internment project. And I initially worked with Native American artists, and one man sat down and said, I really like what you're doing, but why don't you do something from your own culture? And at that point, I realized that I didn't have a culture because during the war, it was taken away. So the biggest educational thing has been, for me, for the last 5 years, working on this project with my husband and understanding my family, understanding what happened. And I think that's, as far as for myself, as far as finding my culture, is really the most important thing that I've learned thus far.
Thank you. Would any of the other artists like to make a comment on their most significant educational, what they've experienced?
Sure. I learned to twine.
All right.
In a tapestry class, we had to outline a form in a tapestry, and they taught me how to twine, to take 2 pieces and just, and it was so basic, but
Sometimes the simplest thing can change your world, right? So with this wrapping up, we'd like to open the floor
some willow over from Germany. We also, of course, use willow over there from, most of the German willow actually comes from France, from Spain. And it's all called Americana. And they don't know what it is what it amounts to, because any given bundle will be different. But it's Americana, and it came from Spain. You know? So some of the willow I got from France is excellent. But in terms of here, yeah, we grow up Herbaria, and it's quite good.
Thank you.
So did Columbus bring it back to Spain? Did Columbus possibly bring it back to Spain?
Well, I know where ours came from. It came, you know, there's been so many regulations on sailors crossing lines of different countries. It's like, you know, the diseases can't cross the Canadian border. There must be a wall there. I don't know. But at any rate, yeah, ours initially came from Canada. That came from Europe. And you have ways of getting here. Make baskets and take them apart, you know. Yeah. And, but yeah, I wish I could talk to someone, including the masters I worked with, who knew what Spanish willow was, and they just really don't.
Another question? No? You have this august body of artists here. It's your opportunity. Okay, yes.
I'm interested in this internment project, Jim. Is there learn more about that?
Oh, actually, now that you ask, my husband has a lot of paintings that he's done, and we started 5 years ago, and I've probably got 5 pieces done. It's actually going to launch at the Shack Art Center in Everett, Washington, in June, and we hope to travel it. We're just now talking about that because I've been so slow. It takes me so long to do a lot of my pieces, and a lot of them are really emotional, as you can see. But a lot of them are very personal to what happened to my family. So that's it. I mean, if you're interested in seeing it, it's going to be at the Shack Art Center, and hopefully we are going to be able to travel it.
I have a question, and it's for any and all of you in general, and it's about space. You know, we make things, we use specialized materials and tools. We finish this work, and it lives many places, but oftentimes in various crates in our facilities. And I'm interested, you know, Jan mentioned that she's got a designated freezer, designated freezer for her gut. And I'm wondering about other types of particular storage strategies you have for managing the myriad stuff that is a part of the practice. I'm not saying it's like, you know, I'm just thinking crate management, you ship it from here to there, but, you know, all of those little tiny pieces of material that you're working with, and all of the things that have to be soaked for a certain period of time, and all of those, you know, there's a whole world here, and I'm just curious if anybody has.
I have a freezer too, because when I have material left over at the end of the basket, that goes in the freezer. So there's one freezer for food and another freezer for willow. And then I work in an upstairs bedroom in our house, which is perhaps a little bit crazy, but there's a barn where the baskets are on display. People ask about our studio or shop. It's a barn. But I live on a farm, which is very fortunate because we both grow the material there, but there's 2 barns. There's one barn where the baskets are on display, along with some vegetables. And then there's another barn full of willow. And I have an old dairy tank, that's stainless steel, that I lucked onto down the street. That's my soaking tank, 7 feet long and 3 feet wide, stainless steel. Because you can get stock tanks, but they rust out. So, but I live on a farm, there's lots of space.
You know, good. It's good.
I can make a stab at that.
Okay.
I started a lot of it. So it is rolled up and hung on bars, and I'm short, so it can hang fairly low before I hit it. And so I've got coils and coils and coils of bark that are going through their drying process there, and it revolves. So then when you're harvesting your grasses, now you've got pipes that have your strung out grasses on it. So all that sealing space is incredibly useful to me. And then it starts to pile up, and you have to come up with cardboard boxes and storage and barns and outbuildings and all that too. But the sealing part of it is probably the most useful.
I might add to that, I wish that we were the same height. When you run into bark or grass, it's one thing, but the pipe that it's on, no, I would say that one of the things that happens to me is when I'm making skeins, there are certain things, I only teach traditional European German style. So you take a class in 5 days and you learn to prepare the material, the whole thing. So it isn't like I have a bunch of material sitting around, but what I just have the rods themselves. But what does happen is as I'm trying to determine the sizes for baskets, or the one item we do is bracelets, that's kind of a fun thing, I will end up with a lot of material that's either a little too thin, a little too wide, a little too narrow, whatever. And every once in a while, when my workspace is just literally covered and it's falling off the pins that I put in the wall, then I have Judy. And she said, don't throw that away. And so I give it to her, because our basketry is black and white.
All right. Any last questions? I am really honored to have been able to ask you these questions and to hear your points of view. As interesting, more interesting even, is to go to the galleries and view these artists' work now that you've seen or heard a little bit of how they proceed. If you haven't been to the Lightcatcher Gallery, it's open until 5 o'clock, and there's plenty of time. And downstairs, there are also two basketry exhibitions that you shouldn't miss. Anything else?
Next question.
Yeah. Yeah, question.
Yeah, I have a question. What kind of advice would you give to a new beginner? Just somebody who's just starting out.
Good question.
I'm a Northwest basket and attend either the retreat that's on the Kitsap Peninsula in January, or you can also go to the Oregon retreat that's on the coast in September.
Don't forget basket.
And Basket Day, really, Basket Day is the best thing, because the third weekend of
July 14th.
July 14th this year. Yeah. So Basket Day is a free day for people that want to know something, and they pay us teachers to teach, and the only thing that interested people or students have to do is pay the supply fee. So it's to get people interested in to learn something.
Where is that held?
Pardon?
Where is that held?
Maplewood Rock, the Maplewood Rock and Jam Club outside of And then 1 month from today, on March 24th, Suzanne is not over there, over at the Lightcatcher building, there will be a day of some short basketball classes, 4 classes, given by members of the Northwest Basketball Guild.
Suzanne has one final statement, and thank you again for coming.
On behalf of the Whatcom Museum, I want to thank all of you for being here. It means a lot to us to be able to